All right. Hello, I'm Brett Turner. I was born in Jackson County on March 14, 1964. Spent the last 47 years here. Several years ago, I had a great, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to become good friends with a couple of fine old fellas, excuse that, fine fellas that are two of the greatest men I've ever known. They're going to introduce themselves shortly. But I got this idea to have them sit down and talk with me for just a short period about their life experiences and how those experiences have gone to develop the way they feel, maybe to help us interpret some of the things that we see happening in our country for the good and the bad. You might call this an out-of-the-box dialogue. There is an agenda, but we're not going to follow. We're just going to throw out things from here to there. There was an historian, Samuel Eliot Morison, who said, if we don't remember our history, we're going to repeat it. And maybe some of it is worth repeating, and maybe some of it not. But at the end of the day, what I hope to have is an eyewitness to history account from two fellas from the generation that Tom Brokaw called the greatest generation, which I happen to believe as well. Joe?
Okay. Don't need much about me. The main thing about me is I have 93 years of experience. I have 6 generations in this locale, so I have a pretty good idea of how people think and people express themselves in this area. And I have traveled some. And so I also have that modified by international feelings and people, how they think otherwise. Now, our political system is important. And we have too many people today, and not that everything's bad, but think if it's, it's more than 10 years old, it's not worth thinking about. But our political system is important and it's badly in need of correction. And our citizen contact and input is not beyond hope or repair, just as evidenced by Carl being seated maybe one table over from John Boehner just the other night down in Florida. Were you there? How about that? All right, so we do have access to wisdom from wise men, much wiser than any of us. And these are like Tom Paine's writings. These are the times that dry men sow. And we do need correction, and we have the facilities and the atmosphere to get them done. And when I told him that I think we can find these answers right in our bill of in our instruments of government, and particularly the preamble, well, not the preamble, the preamble and the Constitution, but before that by the Declaration of Independence. And always said that stuff's way too long. Just to prove to them that it is, I have everything you need right here. Actually, you have about 5 instances of 5 lines that tell you maybe all you need. So we do have access to it. And I want to watch it and see that I don't give you too much access to it.
Okay, Joe, may I interrupt? Carl, why don't you introduce yourself before we go on?
Alrighty. Yeah, that's a good idea.
I'm Carl Shake. I was born in 1934 in a small town south of Terrell, Indiana, Farmersburg. I lived through the Second World War and then served in Korea. I was born in 1934, so when the war started, I was 7. I do remember.
You were how?
7.
Okay.
When World War II started.
When World War II started. And I do remember when it started vaguely. I can remember my grandmother crying that everybody was going to go into service, and all my family volunteered to go into the service. And then when the war was over, I would have been 12 years old, and I can remember that real well. I stood on the corner and they delivered newspapers, and people was running up and buying newspapers about as quick as you could get them unwrapped. They dropped off just ones that had string over it, and people was grabbing newspapers. The Second World War was over. Then I came from a family was good, hard-working people, but education was not really important to them. And everybody, when they turned 16 years old, you went to work. Nobody said anything about you staying in school. You just, when you turned 16, you went to work. And my brother got drafted when I was 16 and went to Korea. He got into some really heavy combat in the infantry, and he was in a bunker of, I think it was either 10 or 12 people, and they had a direct hit, and everybody got killed except him. And he could hear them digging them out and saying they're all dead, and he said, no, we're not all dead. So right after his terrible experience of being near death, he wrote a letter home. At that time, you know, there was no communications like telephones and things like that. He wrote a letter home and told Mom to tell me not to get drafted, to either join the Navy or the Air Force. And I chose the Air Force because I'd always liked to be around airplanes.
Yeah.
I served the, I was the last 7 months of the Korean War. I was in Kunsan, which is in the middle of South Korea, and was a flight engineer on B-26 bombers.
That's a bit of an issue.
Yeah, Billy Mitchell, and I was in the 8th Bomb Squadron in there. I had the opportunity of meeting Joe several years ago, but really over the last 5 or 6 years, he and I have become very good friends and share a lot of time together. And I was asked to write a note in a book that they was making up for Joe at church. And the first thing that I could think of, I'm a better person for knowing Joe Robertson. He's taught me a lot about.
I just got over it.
Yeah. but he you know, if he had a title, it would be Gentleman Joe.
Yep.
And every time I'm with him, I learn something. If it's not history, it's just something about life. And he just joy to be around, and we're going to not let him die. We're going to keep him pumped up and going and everything. So, but that's kind of the short story about me. And I can fill in from the Second World War on some things. But,
Okay.
Joe's a real true historian, and we're going to treasure this for years.
Yep.
Well, I don't want to let him stop there, but the thing about him is that of all, and I know a lot of people, but the thing that I don't know of anybody that is so dedicated to helping as many people in the whole world. I'm not talking Brownstown or Vernonia, I'm talking, I don't know how many thousand people I don't know anybody's name, but I know thousands of people, and nobody compares to him, and helping other people.
Wow.
That's important.
Well, again, I'm honored to know both of them. I really am. It's once in a lifetime thing. So, now that we've been all warm and fuzzy,
Yep.
Yeah.
you mentioned that you wanted to, I guess,
I want to start with a declaration.
okay, from my perspective, having grown up born in the 60s and grown up in the 70s, and raised with parents and grandparents who were well up in age before they had grandkids, I heard a perspective from, for the lack of a better term, when times were better, when people were more, they were more morally solid. You know, and now we get to a time, we went from that to now we get to a time where you can't even say a prayer before a football game.
That's key.
How did, in your mind, in your guys' mind, what happened?
You gotta listen.
Okay.
That, if you will look at the instruments that I have then, there are 5 lines. And in those 5 lines, there are 5 representations to God. Now, we're talking about the Declaration of Independence. And I told you, you'll have to listen again. Benjamin Franklin was not a totally religious man, but he was he said, there's one thing that was common in that group, they all believed in the providence of God. And that was the thing that they could look to. They all believed in different things, very different politically, but they all believed in God. So that they put those other things aside because they recognized that as being the most important. So even though these are things like slavery, these are things that are really down states' rights. These are really important things. But they voted how many of them voted for it? All of them, unanimously. They put them aside and said, okay, what is important as God? And they said that 5 times in 5 lines.
Yeah.
Now, do you hear that?
Yeah, I have it right here.
You have it right
Yeah,
there.
I have it right here.
But I mean, you know, what you hear is, oh, we can't have any mention of God. We can't have it. Well, that's what we're founded on, and we have lost that. Now I have 4 people that we have recognized with as being great people, and they are. They're not nearly all of them, but we've chosen them well. There's Washington, and there's Thomas Jefferson, and you may have to help me out with my 4th. But no, and Teddy Roosevelt, and who did I leave out?
Lincoln.
Who?
Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln.
Oh, sure. Very, very. And yes, and the American people do know them, but that's about all they know about them. But we put them in stone on Mount Rushmore, and they're in the tablets of the hearts of the American people. And all of them had particular things. Washington, he believed he had to get along with everybody to get support for his armies and win the war. And he did that. And then he said we shouldn't get in foreign entanglements. That's not bad advice. All these people had good, what I would call good bad. And look at Lincoln. The things that he said, government's by and all and for the people. And he believed in a supreme government of the United States. And look at Jefferson. States' rights, local government's important. Oh, I mean, we're miles apart, but yet we came together with the thing that is important, God. And you probably never heard that even said. And it's just exactly what you were saying. The farther back you go, or the farther up you came, the farther away we get from God, from that. And really, if you think a little about it, if you know the first, I believe it's the 3rd chapter of Genesis, maybe the 17th verse. Anyway, where the Spirit of God is, there is liberty. Now, what were we looking for in this? All these instruments I'm talking about. Liberty. And it comes from God. And I'm not trying to be Jonathan Edwards here or anything. I'm just telling you what our forefathers recognized, and they saved the country with it. And we can too. But I think somebody said something ridiculous the other day about there was something came out that had God in it, they had to take it out. Bullshit. Well, I'd like to see it. I'd like to see some lawyer that has some knowledge and some guts say, what do you people think you're doing? 5 times in 5 lines they tell you there's a God, and they tell you that and it's not only that, it says we rely on the providence of God. Now a little further south, you had what you've been mentioning. You had the guy, who you think we're going to talk about, is the guy that said, I have no guide for my future except for the past. And he said, you know, if I cannot, give me what? Give me liberty or give me death.
Patrick.
He didn't even make my team.
Yeah.
But he did really good.
Let me refer to something that I'll see what you guys think of this. The First Amendment of the Bill of Rights,
That's right.
which we would consider a biggie, says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. And it goes on, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, the right of the people to peacefully assemble. But it seems to me, see what you think of this, people have interpreted that to mean that if we pray before school, somehow the government is a proponent of that religion.
A lot of people say that. That's bullshit.
But that's what they're hiding behind.
Well, I know.
That's exactly what they're hiding behind. And so Thomas Jefferson himself said, that's
I'm
what.
telling you, 5 times in 5 lines.
Right.
They're saying, God, God, God,
Right.
God. And then I take you to Corinthians, where the Spirit of God is, there is liberty. What have we lost? Liberty. Or at least it's shaken.
Yeah, it's shaken.
You know, and so, you know, I don't know what stone they turned under to get any kind of background for that, but they have used it for everything.
Yes, they have.
And look on picking any coin out of your pocket. What does it say? In God we trust.
In God we
all
trust.
others cash.
Right.
And the same way with you go to Washington D.C. What does it say? All over Washington D.C. God, God, God. In Providence we call it. Now I'm not trying to be Jonathan Edwards. I'm just saying what it says.
Do you think our modern day media might have a little bit to do with that, Joe?
Oh, well, of course, because media follows what the people want, what they think the people want to read, and will read even if it disturbs them.
Right. The fact that
what you do about that. Now, I know more about. I don't know it, and I'm glad we're 3 generations because we hear expressed the different opinions of 3 generations, and they are different. But it's how it got that far out of line. Well,
But here's something that tells me it may not be that far out of line. Here's a little ray of hope. You remember when 9/11 happened?
I'm sorry if I got that. I'm afraid I did. Go ahead.
No, but it is out of line. But when 9/11 happened, for weeks and months after that, this was a different country. Flags were flying everywhere. People were praying. And there was we jailed. I mean, every member of the United States Congress stood on the steps of the Capitol and sang God Bless America together. But because of that incident. So that was a bad incident, but to me that's, people will gather around something, but day to day we seem to get so skewed on what's important.
I don't want to be too pessimistic either, but I just think the education is needed in that. We need a champion, and he's got to be, he mustn't be political, because, you know, who's going to pay attention to Nancy Pelosi or John Boehner? They're so far apart, and they aren't getting together on what we need to get together on. And liberty is more important than anything I know of. These guys gave up their life. While they pledged my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor.
Yes.
Now, and how many of them? All of them.
All of them.
Now, listen. Boy, you sure.
Wonder who would do that today.
Well, I don't know if they gave them a chance. Well, the first place, they couldn't survive the planet. When they got to that fortune part, we'd have to have accomplished. Well, that's not true. We've got a lot of good women. And that has been a very positive development. We've made women people.
Yeah.
Well, we've made slaves people.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing that we have done. And reading in there, again, you had people that said slavery was a great thing. It was their fortune. And they come along and they say in here, all men are created equal. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of guys, they didn't believe that, but they went along with it for the sake of the better good, of liberty.
Liberty. Mm-hmm. I agree with that. Mm-hmm. Although, to prove that and to get that passed, you know, it took a civil war.
Yes,
for
it
us.
did. It did, and it did take a civil war.
Do you know that Abraham Lincoln won the presidency with not one electoral vote from the South?
Of course not. And why didn't he? Because he believed in supreme government for local and nail. That wasn't a civil war. That was a war of northern aggression.
Northern Yep.
Because we've given, and I'm sorry to use these terms, but you know what I mean. We hear the white people giving the devil all the time for how bad they, you know, how bad slavery was, and it was. But no one ever said, where else? And I know, nowhere in history have people in that number stood up and absolutely sacrificed 400,000 lives so another 400 black people, good black people, I'm certainly not a racist. Not that I don't, I suppose everybody has some ethnicity. You know, have you ever heard anybody say anything about giving all the people giving their lives to free the slaves? When they're giving them white devil, oh, don't treat us well, and we didn't treat them bad. But there were people in here, all men are created equal, willing for that to be said.
And I think at the time that was a huge thing. I mean, we could talk about race relations and that forever, but I think now it's not what you've done for me, but what are you going to do for me? And not just not just a race thing, but a lot of people seem to feel that way today. They have real short memories.
Well, they don't need to forget what terrible, but now of course, they need to, and some of them do know the history. I've been in where they gathered the slaves in Africa, and the white men didn't gather the slaves, the chiefs gathered the slaves and sold them to the bitches that were buying. I'm sorry, that's of course that.
Can I jump ahead to something?
Yeah.
Okay. Carl mentioned growing up during the war.
Who did?
Carl did.
Yeah.
The World War II. And I know you served during the war.
So 39 months, I won't forget it.
And I've got to say that I told you the other day that I'll be the first to admit I'm a Republican.
Yeah, well, that's what I run around. I just run around and ready for pepper. So I know how the other half lives.
But I'm about halfway through a book called No Ordinary Time by Doris Kearns Goodwin, and I've gained a whole new respect for FDR. I never thought of it from his perspective and where he was at the time. I can't say I agree with the New Deal, but I agree with what his thinking was, and I agree with how the pressure on him to handle the war. And I didn't realize, and what I'd like to hear you guys say, what happened, not on the fronts, because we can read in the books what happened, but what happened?
The books don't have to go back.
What happened here? What? I heard there was an aluminum scrap drive because when the war started up,
Officer cannons out of the courthouse yard. We had Civil War cannons in the courthouse yard.
and those went to the meltdown. Yeah.
And the piles of cannon shells or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was several things that was going on where everybody was.
Gasoline and sugar, for example.
Yeah, you had coupons to get shoes. You had a sticker on the windshield by how many miles your employment required that you travel. You had like A, B, and C, I think it was.
Right.
Three numbers, and you would get so many gallons of gas a month.
Everybody was in it.
Everybody was in it. And tires, you could hardly buy tires, rubber tires.
I traded a box of shot coming home. I had to trade a box of shotgun shells, for a tire in order to get home.
Yeah.
A box of shotgun shells for a tire.
Yeah.
To get home.
To get home.
Sugar, there was a lot of things, bananas, stuff that was grown in other countries.
Yeah.
It just very, very seldom could you get anything like that. They lowered the speed limit down, and Joe has one memory of what the speed was, and I have another.
Mine's 55.
Mine's 35. And I had an uncle that
I drove faster.
I had an uncle that, well, I know it's 35 because he had a car, and and a lot of people where I was around didn't have cars. My mother had a car. Yeah, and he started driving 35 because that was the speed limit in the Second World War, and he died in the 70s, and he still never drove over 35 miles an hour because of the Second World War. But there's just a lot of shortages.
There, got a lot of that.
Yeah.
I'll just give you that.
Okay,
Okay.
awesome.
And the things I remember, they were selling a lot of war bonds, and they was doing a lot of scrap drives. People was bringing anything they had, metal in, and things like that. I mean, is everybody working together? You know,
And sugar and coffee were all already.
yeah.
They were all right.
And that was probably in my lifetime when the women joined the workforce.
You're
Yeah.
absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rosie the River.
Yeah.
Rosie the River.
Yeah, and at that time, it was the only time my mother ever worked. And she worked in a factory, it was tied to something that supporting the military. I'm not exactly sure what it was, but during that time, she did go to work there. My uncle served in the Philippines.
That was Chaco.
Yeah, and he was in the army there.
In the Philippines.
And other relation that was in the Navy and everything, but it just, you know, and during that time, you couldn't buy new cars, new trucks.
Right.
There was a few trucks, they
Yeah.
called them war trucks,
Mm-hmm.
that farmers was able to get. And Earl Hobbs has one of the very few, I think it's a 1944, and Friday Robinson, John Robinson's uncle, acquired it somewhere, and it was called a war truck, because the farmers could get some things that,
So when we got out of service, we got a permit to buy.
yeah. But
When
there's
you
a
got out
lot
of the service, you got a permit. You got a permit to buy one when you got out of the service.
Yeah, you had to have,
And I did.
a lot of stuff, you had to have permits or coupons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had a coupon book that when you wanted to buy certain foods, you had to get that. But I remember the shoes real well because it was really a big deal.
That's right.
To be able to get a new pair of shoes.
Oh, that's right. You had to get some officer you had to get an officer to attest that you did it.
Yeah.
Margaret was an officer, so he attested to it, so they needed to pair.
But that's kind of my remember things on the Second World War. Another thing they did, they called them victory gardens. People was growing gardens.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people didn't have gardens before, put out gardens. And there was the Uncle Sam, with him pointing, saying, Uncle
Yeah.
Sam wants you.
Yeah.
That was a big advertisement. And then V for Victory.
D for Victory.
That was a lot, V for Victory.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, there was a lot of V for Victory. And I remember the night, it was a Saturday night, if I'm not mistaken, when the war was over. And
I know we're talking more about this.
World War
World War
II.
II, yeah.
Yeah, and we couldn't nobody could afford fireworks. It may not have been available, but there's a lot of shotguns being shot all over that the war was over. And but you can give me your opinion
Well,
you served in it. And,
but I was shaking my head most of the time for what you were saying. You know, and some of the things that I wrote down.
Yeah. Yeah. This is interesting.
I tell you how right I was. I didn't even think there was going to be a war, and I didn't take. You could take everybody had to take ROTC 2 years if you're in college. A land grant college.
Right.
And you don't want a land grant college. You go like Indiana, Purdue. You had to. Well, a lot of other places too had ROTC, and I took the required first 2 years, and I said I didn't put those shiny boots on, and polish every brass. too busy. I had to raise some egg and basketball to play.
Yeah.
And I didn't think, what for? They ought to be able to work that out. And that's how dumb I was, and yet exposed to all the same media that everyone else was. And so it wasn't, there were strong German movements, and you see how bad we treated the Japanese, but we couldn't, we did so many things right. Don't dwell on the things we did wrong.
Right.
What did we do that we haven't done since?
Right.
It wasn't war.
Right.
So
Exactly.
that's what you need to do.
Exactly.
Do the things that win the war.
Yes. That's my new admiration for FDR was his total intent was to win the war.
Yeah, and who made the decision to do it? Truman.
In the end, yes. Yeah, he did. In the end, he did.
Oh, yes.
But I'm not sure was that technology actually available to FDR, or did that actually
But no.
the bomb?
No.
FDR didn't have the bomb.
He died.
Right, he died.
But so all that load, and don't think it was a single load. I mean, there were plenty of people, oh, you must, I got to take a minute to explain this situation, because I didn't know it, but I was involved with the Manhattan Project. But nobody knew they were involved with the Manhattan Project. And I was a general's aide. So I did have some knowledge of what I didn't know about. He did this overseas. He did this, they had a meeting, Churchill and Stalin, and Churchill and Stalin, and FDR, they did it overseas, and we had to watch out, because you guys don't know who Bill Jenner was, but he was a near presidential candidate, and he was our Republican senator,
Yeah.
and a good one.
Yeah.
You hear me say that?
Oh, I heard you say that.
That was him, Indiana.
Oh, right down, knew it, came to my office all the time, he was real down.
I knew it, heard the name.
He knew the good Republican. You knew I got appointed to the two governors appointed me to boards because they had to appoint a Democrat, and I was the nearest thing to a Republican they could get. But I couldn't, 7 years, no, 5 years of it was all I could stand. They're going to be newspapers in here, and they're not going to like up here. But it went fine. Anyway, I'll put that back, and I get off the
You were talking about the ending of the war and Truman's decision to drop the
there are
bomb.
these three guys, and he has to, listen, it's not an easy thing to decide. The Russians are coming in on the Germans, they think they've got the war won, we're coming in this way, we think we got the war won. We had already firebombed. Now, you know why we had to take all those islands in the Pacific, or do you know?
Well, I know part of for dropping off points. That was our leapfrog.
Yes, and that had to be like a Sunday afternoon drive, because we had 3 bombs.
Right.
We're gonna blow one of them up in a test that they tell me is and I don't believe it. They tell me ammunition blow up at Almagard. I've been to Almagard many times, and knew the territory, and knew that was important, but I had no idea. I couldn't spell atomic. I mean, I had no idea. So, but it shook me 90 miles away.
Really?
It shook me 90 miles away. And they had to clear every 6,000 people on Iwo Jima, 6,000 people, and I'm not much shit.
Right.
But anyways, you could put your wheels down, that had to be taken out.
Yeah.
Our office in Tinian, and it was where they were going to go bomb, what the real operation was. And you wouldn't know today, you've been here since then, you wouldn't know today that we took that, it's Japanese video. But anyway, we had to have that, and it had to go. And they had 100 key cities, and we had already firebombed 40 of them. And the generals told Truman, if we don't hurry up, you're not going to have any big cities left to bomb. But that's still, we saved 1 million lives.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And we did.
Yeah, we did.
And people didn't realize that. So that's a site, but it's an important site.
It is very important.
But Truman made a decision that was not Oppenheimer himself. Oppenheimer was the guy who developed it,
Mhm.
Roosevelt.
Mhm.
And he was not at all sure that this was a humane thing to do. I am 100% sure it was the humane thing to do. I didn't want another million Americans killed. I didn't want another million Japanese killed. And boy, it didn't.
Well,
3 days.
As you know, the Japanese Empire had made up their mind they were going to fight to the death.
Oh,
There was no surrender.
No question about
There
it.
was no surrender. So I agree with you. Absolutely.
You have to.
I absolutely agree with you.
And when I hear some people, that's a bad thing. They shouldn't do that.
Well, they just don't realize what they're saying.
They don't know it.
They don't know anything.
They weren't seeing these buddies getting blown up.
Right, right.
Hey, Joe, listen to you talking there, come up with a question that I never had even thought of before. But after we bombed Japan, and
You were in, man. You were around.
I was around, yeah, I remember when they dropped the bomb and everything, but on rebuilding Japan,
Mhm.
did the Japanese rebuild, or did we put a lot of money like
Well, we
do
put a lot of
today?
money in it, but I'll tell you why.
Was that called the Marshall Plan? The Marshall Plan
Well,
rebuild?
that was your.
That was in Europe.
We did it for everybody, that's all.
Right.
But listen, look at the difference way people responded. The Japanese used what we gave them, and they built it in a hurry.
In a hurry.
They became friends, and they competitors real quick and put a lot of people out of business. Now, that took a lot of stomach to put up with that. Germany, how long did it take in Germany? And, well, you had experience in Korea. What year were you in?
I was in Korea in 51. No.
Well, anyway, by
55.
70, you couldn't tell there had ever been a war there.
Right.
And what are we doing in New Orleans?
You threw me there in New Orleans.
Yeah, we still got.
Katrina.
Oh, Katrina.
We still got all kinds of damage. In these other countries we're talking about, what we did help.
Yes.
I may be subject to, no, I think probably more plus into it, but I don't know.
Did we do it financially, or did we?
We did everything.
Everything, yeah.
We went in, we had people there to help.
You could get permission, if you, again, politics enters in, but you could get permission to do about anything. And we had the beginning of expansion, we financed our composition. And, that got both good and bad.
Yeah.
We've had no trouble with Japan since.
And not likely to.
Not likely to.
Not likely to.
Well, we have two things here. We have, one of the presidents asked one of the secretaries, how many friends of liberty like ours do we have? He said, oh, we want all the friends we could get, we have lots of them, but we have only one custodian. And what we've been trying to do is put our government, our freedom, we're trying to put it there, but we can't do that.
Okay, that brings me to an interesting question, and I just thought about this. I think back in the day it was called Manifest Destiny.
Yes, you betcha. I can talk about manifest destiny.
Well,
Set me off.
and then when Wilson was president, he was an isolationist up until a point, correct?
Yeah.
And during the war, there was a lot of isolation. Stay out of the war, stay out of the war.
Yeah. But that was a different war.
But even today, we have people who say, stay out of the rest of the world.
I do.
You say that.
I say that.
What do you,
No, I don't say that. I quote my man.
you quote what?
I quote my man that said that, my wise man that said that. And he said, we are friends of liberty everywhere. We are custodian of liberty here.
Okay, so, and I don't necessarily disagree with that on the surface, and I'm not a big Manifest Destiny kind of guy.
Oh, shit, you're not.
No.
Oh, well, I suppose you think the Indians were nice guys. I bet you do.
No,
Let me
no.
tell you.
No, they wasn't nice guys,
They weren't.
but are you going to say we didn't take advantage of?
Well, no more than they would have if they had been there. They'd have killed you in scouts.
that's a dog eat dog kind of concept, and I agree with
No,
that.
wait a minute, you don't know, I had more input there.
Okay,
We had, all right, the nations of the world have been fighting for 300 years. And the Indian tribes were totally divided. And don't think Indian life was nice. It was not nice at all. And there were 10 times as many Indians in this area. 10 times as many. I'm using government figures. 10 times as many Indians in this area as there were white people. And we suddenly had won the war from mighty Britain in '83, and they had given us in the Paris Treaty all the rights of the land, north and west, north of the Ohio and west, maybe even west. Anyway, not well defined. Anything, if you cross the Park River in the Ohio River, this is yours.
exactly.
And they picked 39 people, ordinary Americans. One of them was a half-breed French, one was a pregnant Indian, and they thumbed their nose at the kings of the world and said, "This land is ours." And under Jefferson made it stick, which was the dream of the Manifest Destiny people. All the way. How far do you go? We are not restricted. We are going all the way. And then we built the national road to within, they finally gave up on that and built the national road within 30 miles of a bunch of big highway. Route 66. We didn't give a shit back then whether they built the national road or not.
Okay, so what you referred to there was the Lewis and Clark expedition.
You betcha.
Okay, the Louisiana Purchase and Jefferson sent Maryland. Okay, but then I heard you say earlier that you were an isolationist, correct?
I'm an isolationist as far as that was liberty, and now we're talking. You're not. They're not the same things. There was nobody in charge of that land.
Of what land?
All the land from the Mississippi River to the Pacific Ocean. All the land. That's Manifest Destiny. And Jefferson was a continental president. He changed. The people were, they changed
Okay.
it.
Just for the sake of argument, and I'm just for the sake of dialogue.
Yeah, you need to straighten it out.
Okay. I understand what you're saying, but to say nobody was in charge of that land,
That's right.
that's not exactly correct, because for millions of years before
Well,
that,
not millions, thousands. I'm sure got a little Mormon influence.
but okay, so let's say at least for 20,000.
Go for 11.
Well, they've dated artifacts from Clovis, New Mexico.
They process any good,
The carbon 14, yeah, I do.
Oh, well, you better look again.
Okay, well anyway, let's say 10, 11,000, 20,000, whatever. But there was somebody there. You say their life wasn't that easy, but it was their life.
When the buffalo was there, and who did you ever hear Cochise?
Oh yeah.
Well, who was his buddy? When he wasn't his buddy. When you heard two Indians, you heard an Apache, and I can't say the name of the other one.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, there were people there.
Geronimo?
Right. Now here comes the expert.
Yeah, but now you're talking much later on. Geronimo was much later
No,
on.
That's what the New York Times made you believe, because they did not tell these people that they wanted to come through this, they wanted to come occupy it. They didn't tell them. And who do you think taught the Wild West people? Who do you think taught them how to be criminals? The Reno's, way ahead of them.
I think, well, you kind of lost me there. I didn't quite follow.
Okay, you know everything about the massacre of the Indians, the soldiers. But
Little Bighorn?
yeah,
Yeah.
the big one,
Okay.
and what's his name? And that came later than many much bigger battles that Harrison was involved in. But the government weren't going to tell about that, because they didn't want. Are you going to go where the Indians are 10 to 1 are going to kill you? No, we didn't tell them. We wanted them to take land, and what they did for $2 an acre. They could pay 50 cents an acre over 4 years, 50 cents a year, and
Think about what happened. Okay, I agree with you. Talk about what happened, what went on before the Clark Grant.
What do you mean when the Indians were fighting each other?
Well, even before that, when the Europeans started moving out of Virginia into what was then known as the West, right here.
That was, you bet it was right here.
Right here.
We wanted to put people in.
Okay.
After we got the kings of the earth out of the way. We had to get them out of the way.
The Indians.
No, I'm talking about the Spanish. See, we had the,
Yeah, but Joe, by that time, the Spanish there wasn't an influence here by that time.
well, it took them, they had to whip each other. Everybody, the French and, did you ever hear of the French and Indian Wars?
Now, but that's a little bit later on. The French and Indian War happened after this area was.
Who do you want to side?
I don't know. I don't know that I want to side anybody, but it's intriguing to me that we took advantage.
We were not in any position of power until when?
Where? What power? Where? Here?
Yeah.
I'd say sometime after the 1780s. 1777 was the year of the Bloody Sevens or whatever.
Paris Treaty.
Huh?
After the Paris Treaty, we had the land. So
Well-
that's the first time in the Paris Treaty that we had control of this land.
How do we have control? I'm just asking, how do we have control of something? That's the word of the manifest destiny. We have control because we say we have control. That's the only reason we have.
No, that's not the only reason. We were treated. We were given this land by treaty by the kings of the earth, and we said, "To hell with you. But we're going all the way because you haven't defined it any other way."
Who gave us the land?
The people that currently had control of it, which were the French, and you heard the French and Indian War,
Oh yeah.
and they were always juggling sides.
Yeah.
And then who was before that? The Spanish.
Okay.
So you had the French. And the French couldn't fool with Napoleon and us too. So they were out of it. The British we had whipped, and the Spanish was going to pot. So here's three pictures, there's another one I'm thinking about. They're neutralized. They've been demasculated. And that's when my French Creek Indian, my French Creek Frenchman, and my pregnant Indian, and an ordinary American, so I'm related to him, thank goodness, said, this land is ours, and they moved more people, not more. They moved a migration through, nobody knows, they didn't want anybody to know. We moved more people through here than probably any immigration other than the Israelites. Right through Jackson County, right through Huff Creek. How do you like that speech?
That was good. That was good. I'm impressed. I don't know if I'm making myself clear.
Well, you're trying to say somebody controlled this land and they did.
Okay, I will give you that. Maybe I don't know. Maybe the definition of control is where I'm getting hung up on. There were people here.
Oh, there were people, but not long. The Indians didn't migrate. They just moved. They didn't.
It depends on what era of the Indian you're talking about. And the woodland Indian later on did stay. The Indians who lived here did stay.
No, they didn't.
I
No, you can't. And here comes.
yeah, the archaic people
No.
were rovers. They were, but the woodland people, the main Indians that the last Indians who lived here were permanent.
No, there weren't permanent Indians here. Insignificant quality. Insignificant quality.
You know why they wouldn't? I'm just arguing their point. You know why they wasn't in significant quantity? Because we had flat kicked their ass and killed most of them off by that time.
You're wrong.
In 1812, right before this state become,
Don't talk to me about 1812. My people were here then.
am I not right? We had pretty much, we were well on our way to decimating the entire population by 1812.
Oh no, we lost 1,400 people in Fallen Timbers, and they lost about 900. They beat the shit out of us, probably.
Fallen Timbers in Ohio.
Yeah,
Mount Anthony Wayne.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And the best general they had, the prophet, they never really did any very good job of uniting the people.
The prophet, you're talking about Tecumseh and his brother.
Simply love.
Yeah.
west. But the Times, New York Times didn't tell about this, and why, have I made it clear why they didn't? Because they didn't want to stop the white population from coming here. They wanted to sell them land to occupy the manifest destiny land that they had come across.
Okay, that was an aside. Now let's get back to, as World War II.
They wanted to decide that we were listening to wise people of that period. And one of them that I cited again and again was Jefferson. And he was an expansionist.
Yeah. But as World War II started heating up, I forgot where I was going with that, but there were some who wanted us to stay out of the war,
There were lots of, and I don't say this in a bad way, the German Bund was big.
The German what?
Bund, B-U-N-D.
I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, you need to be, because it was a factor until, you know what saved us in the war about how the Japanese took care of the all problem. Then all those divisive problems disappeared. Or did not disappear, almost did.
You mean after Japan attacked Pearl Harbor? Oh yeah.
Attacked Pearl Harbor, we had it our way, and boy, the way I don't see how anybody did the job we did. I don't know. And we made lots of mistakes, but boy, we made that for them. Don't you feel that way?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
they say, well, we should have been a ship that won.
Right. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I take that.
You know, I remember the war starting, but I don't remember, and I guess I wasn't paying attention to history, the Japanese War and the German War.
Well, I'm within a few days. The German War was over. I think it's June, but it could be.
Well, I know when it was over, I remember that.
All right.
I don't remember when it started.
The German War?
Well, the German War didn't start until the Japanese bombed us.
Yeah, Hitler declared war on us after we were bombed by Japan.
See,
I knew that it was.
well, they're the Axis.
It was going at the same time.
Yeah.
Well, that's right. They were bound together by treaty.
Yeah, and we called it the World War.
Well, the reason was because Hitler went to Poland, Belgium, Amsterdam, France. He was bombing Britain.
He had bombed.
Yeah. Now, do you remember the Lend-Lease program?
Oh, sure.
The Lend-Lease program, FDR, everybody said, stay out of the war. Well, FDR come up with this plan, I think it was brilliant, where Churchill was crying for anything he could get. Planes, ships. So Roosevelt come up with a plan where we could loan them. Would loan be the right word? We could loan them munitions and ships and planes for a payment later on, but what he took in payment was for us to be able to put some military bases in areas that Britain owned. So that's really, pardon my language, what pissed Hitler off. He knew we were helping Britain.
Hitler was part of the Axis, and you've got to remember the Axis. Don't forget the Axis. And the Axis changed hands. Did you remember that?
That was Italy, Germany, and Japan.
Yes, and one time Russia.
I didn't know Russia was there.
They changed sides.
I didn't realize that. I did not realize.
I do remember that.
Yeah. And Petersburg, the terrible battle of Petersburg.
We were scared to death. People were concerned what Hitler was doing.
Yeah.
Because he was trying to take over the world, but yet everybody said, it's their business, stay out of it until Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. Huh? Well, how did you feel the moment you heard Japan attack Pearl Harbor?
There was no question then. Tomorrow, and I did just exactly what you referred to. I didn't wait to get drafted, and it wasn't because I was more, more patriotic and said that. I wanted to be in it. All of us thought we were going to be killed. All of us thought we were going to be killed.
Oh, yeah.
And so,
And as you accepted that too when you went to Korea, that was a good possibility?
Yeah, oh, yes, sure.
So now this is interesting to me. So both of you served in the military during the war. You both understood and had accepted the fact that you may never come back.
oh, no question about that.
And you,
Didn't intend, that was, you had to plan. I remember, I didn't buy insurance. I wanted to leave my wife adequately taken care of, but not too much. I didn't pay my job for that. We could buy insurance.
I tell you, I don't think any politician that starts a war could know how you feel when you're in a combat zone.
Oh, shit.
You're scared to death.
Were you scared?
Absolutely.
Well, he should have been.
Yes.
He should have been.
I can remember the first night that I spent in Korea. And I hadn't even been assigned to the plane yet, but they put me on guard duty. I say first night, it was first night or two. And I was guarding, they called it PLO. It was where they kept gasoline, big 55-gallon drums of gasoline and fuel and different stuff. And I was walking guard duty, and at nighttime, you hear them things on the drums expanded,
Yeah.
and I was terrified.
Now, how old were you at that time?
I had my 19th birthday in Korea.
Wow.
Well, I was 23 and I was a grandpa.
Yeah. But, yeah, I went there in January and had my 19th birthday in February, so I was 18 at that time. But
Wow.
you can't explain it. And, you know, I can understand these guys that's fought them for 10 years, having all the problems they have and everything. And I never want none of my kids to, or grandkids or great-grandkids or ever have to experience being in a combat zone. It's scary.
Oh, it's real scary.
Yes.
Everybody thought they were going to get killed. And there were people, we talk about 4,000 or 5,000 people getting killed. Shit, fuck, I mean, we were getting them killed in 10s and 20s and 50,000.
And I was in the Air Force.
And you see
You
here,
can imagine the people was in hand-to-hand combat, you know, but it did.
and a guy that studied across the desk from me, how long did it take him to get shot down in the early part? A few days. The guy that I played basketball against in the other forward, 3 days. I mean, it was murder early on in World War II because we came in with high altitude bombing. And see, they had been using, I mean, it was low level bombing. They had been using high level. We came in where we could hit the target. Later we had a major bomb site, which again got involved with, and we could really hit it. And then our friends up at Seymour, the Red Tails, you know, by the time we got in there with P-51s and the Black Quadrant, they never lost a bomb. Well, see, we'd send 50 planes out and come back with 12.
Wow.
They didn't all get killed, but I'm sorry to turn it into that. That's what we were expecting, and he had a right to expect that in Korea.
Did you make preparations before you left? Did you talk about this with your mom or anybody, or just something you just?
You know, just everybody was going to service.
Yeah, and we had,
You know,
there wasn't any.
and the worst thing I think that I experienced out of Korea was waiting on a plane to come back that we knew wasn't coming back. And I had one friend of mine, they all got killed.
Really?
Yeah. And we waited and waited and kept, you know, it was night missions.
Oh, yeah.
And we waited and waited and they just didn't come back. You know.
Wow.
And while you're sitting there waiting, you can imagine what's going through your head, you know.
And you know, that is that.
Yeah.
No, Korea was bad.
When I hear you guys talking, all I can think about is your patriotism.
Is what he said. And well, I knew he was going to get killed, and I'd a lot better get shot down and hit a P-26 built a missile bomber than in a wet trench. So boy, let me in there, and it wasn't easy to get in. Had to apply details.
No, the young people that served in Iraq and Afghanistan is, you know, and they're all volunteers.
Yep.
They're all volunteers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're all volunteers now. And when we got into all this, you know, I was thinking about Jordan and my family happened to be in it. And I
Was they good?
Yeah. If they ever went to draft, you know.
Right.
And
It was hard. Oh, here's an interesting aside. You know how close fraternities people are. I pledged in my fraternity, and this guy that became a 4-star general and was actually the third. He was in charge of NATO, which is supreme.
Right.
He was in. See, Eisenhower had all the command of all the armies in the world.
Right. Right.
And following him was Haig. It was scared the time out of him when Whatchamacallit got shot because he said, I'm taking over. Did you know that?
No, you lost me there. I knew Eisenhower was.
All right, when Kennedy was shot.
Okay, Kennedy was shot.
All right, and now, Eisenhower, let's see, yeah. Well, anyway, Haig was at that time.
Alexander Haig.
Alexander Haig
Yeah.
was
Okay,
in
yes.
charge
Yes.
of NATO and all arms.
Right, right.
And he told Johnson that Johnson was in Dallas.
Right. Right.
And when he told him, he said, I'm taking charge here.
Yeah.
Scared the shit out of him.
Yeah.
I was afraid it was going to be military.
Yeah.
It wasn't, but
Right.
it could have been. It could have been.
And that's when they pulled the Bible out on the plane and said, no, we're going to swear Johnson in right here. He was sworn in on the plane.
Okay, that's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
But as you see, it could have been, and
Yes.
that scared him.
Yeah.
that was before you was born.
63, yeah, about 3 months before I was born, 4 months.
Yeah, and it was in November.
November, Kennedy was shot the 22nd, I think, of 63.
And that was right around Kennedy's birthday, the 20th.
But Korea could have set off a much bigger war too.
Oh, yeah.
No, it was a dangerous place.
I was a General Electric at that time, and I was going to school, and we went back into Boston.
Talking about when Kennedy was shot in
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, and I was at GE's meter school up in Massachusetts, and they came in and into the meeting and said the president had been shot, and then came in a few minutes later and said he had died, and they put us on a bus and took us into Boston, which is Kennedy's hometown,
Yeah,
and that town was closed down. There wasn't a restaurant open.
bet.
Nothing. Everything was closed. And they had big pictures in the windows of the department stores, the lights on of him, and it just it was a sad time.
Yeah, I bet it was, yeah. Yeah, it is.
So this is, you know, somewhat of a repeat of Lincoln.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Kelly and I, when Kelly was pretty young, we was walking through a mall, but they had all the televisions on the same station, like maybe 12 televisions all on one station. And it was Walter Cronkite and President Kennedy talking. And I said to Kelly, you know who that is, don't you? And she said, he's the newsman. I said, you know who the other guy is, don't you? And she said, no, I don't know who he is. And so I told her about the president getting killed, and, you know, then I thought, no, wait a minute, she was not born. So that'd be like somebody else talking about Lincoln getting shot.
Right.
That's
To
right.
her, so we, and she was a Terre Haute just with me.
Yeah.
And she said that, I mean, we talked all the way home about, you know, the president and things. I don't know if Kelly remembers that or not. She's pretty young.
We're concerned here with liberty.
Okay.
All right, and I'm just telling you to turn to Corinthians and read in there, where the Lord is, there is liberty. And that's what they realize, our founding fathers. If you have God, you're going to have
get back to it.
I think they told us that.
Yeah.
Again and again. Okay.
Amen. I agree. I absolutely agree. Carl, you have anything else?
No,
We're going to finish up for today, and I can't, speaking personally, this has been a selfish endeavor on my part because I love talking to you guys, and I think this has been great.
Well, I certainly enjoyed it.
Yesterday when I talked to Joe, I said, now I'm going to bug you to do this again, so I'm officially going on camera to say, you're officially being bugged, okay?
yeah,
This was not taken lightly.
no.
Thank you guys very much, Carl.
My pleasure.
It means more than I can say that you guys would sit and talk with